So I just felt compelled for some reason, don't really know why, to talk about my experiences with religion, with religious belief, with faith, belief in God, that sort of thing. So to start, I'll take it from the top. My mom and my dad were both Southern Baptists. I was born in Georgia, and my mom met my dad. They were going to the church where my dad's dad, which is my granddad, was the bishop. He's since passed on. And so, my mom and dad, I guess, I don't think that they had a quote-unquote relationship, but, they had whatever they had going. And then my mom got pregnant, and my dad basically just said that he wasn't the father. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't know why my mom was lying on him. And so my mom, she had a pretty rough pregnancy, as you can imagine, a situation like that. So my granddad, my dad's dad, actually got in the pulpit one Sunday, my mom told me, and announced to everyone that there was a member of the congregation, which was my mom, that was lying on her son, his son, saying that she's pregnant with his child, and that's a lie. Now, my mom was sitting there just kind of, but really embarrassed her, you can imagine. So that happens, and, it was just a horrible pregnancy. And I'm born, and my mom, for some reason, brings me to the church, and my granddad actually came to her and said that he could barely preach because he saw my dad. I looked just like my dad when my mom was sitting there holding me, and he had to come and tell her that. So my mom said, "No, okay, I thank you for telling me that, but you need to go up to the pulpit and say that exact same thing, just how you got up there and said that I was lying on your son." And he did that. So at least he was man enough to get back up there and say that he was wrong. He had to apologize. Now, side note, his wife, my grandma, said, "Oh no," over her dead body, but that's a whole nother thing. So anyway, even with that, my dad, he wasn't trying to be a dad. So my mom, long story, we ended up moving to South Florida, and my family down here was my mom's mom. So, and her dad, we moved in with my grandmother and grandfather, and they were religious. We went to church every Sunday. I was pretty much dragged. I never really felt compelled to go to church, especially as a kid. I just went because they drugged me. And so by the time I was in my teens, the church that we went to, it was so close to my grandma's house, maybe like a 10-minute walk. And so what I would do, I didn't have to sit next to them in church. We would go, but then when we would get to the church, half the time I would just leave. I would just walk back home or walk to a friend's house or something. And yeah, that's pretty much how I felt. I really can say that the one thing that because it was, really ingrained in me, I felt like I was afraid to go to hell, because you just imagined burning for all eternity, whatever that is. And I was like, so I'm sure that if nothing else, I definitely remember thinking that I didn't want to go to hell. So much so that I knew that fornication was a sin. But I mean, come on, 16, 17, you're doing that. And I remember whenever I would have sex, or maybe not whenever, but a lot of times when I would have sex, I would actually ask God for forgiveness right before doing it. And that's how, like, ingrained in me, like, okay, I don't want to go to hell for that. So I can remember doing that a few times. That's crazy. But anyway, so fast forward to I get arrested. Now I know that's probably funny, thinking like, okay, you're asking God to forgive you for fornicating, but then you out in the streets. But yeah, that's what it was. So anyway, I get arrested and looking at going to prison. So just like a whole bunch of other people, I was 18. I said, oh, I need to get close to God. My mom was telling me, you need to get close to God, start praying. So, I did the whole thing. I was praying, reading the Bible, going to all these church services. And in there, before going to prison, if anyone who doesn't know, you go to the county jail. Bunch of chaplains, people that come from the outside, like priests, chaplains, and reverends. They come and bring Bibles and have services. So there's a lot going on as far as religion to get caught up in. So I got caught up in that, and I was just like, I'm gonna change my life when I get out. I'm not gonna go to prison. God's gonna get me out, and I'm gonna be, an evangelist. I'm gonna tell everyone about, how God changed me and He freed me and yada yada. And of course, I went to prison. So, now here's kind of where I remember my mind starting to be open. Was when I got sentenced to prison, there was a guy in the cell. It was more like a unit. There's a lot of us in there. And he was like, man, I noticed you read a lot. You read that Bible and stuff. I'm going to give you a couple books to check out when you get up there. So he told me the name of one I remember was Now Valley Contribution to Civilization by Anthony Browder. And so when I got to prison, I wasn't really feeling the whole Christian thing no more. Gotta be honest. And hey, I'll let you. For anyone who hears this and says, "Oh, well, you were never really a true Christian. You didn't really believe. You only." Hey, you have the right to have that opinion. I definitely believe that I believed. Okay. But anyway, so I got to prison and had my mom order that book for me, and that book really was the first time I had ever been introduced to anything really like contested spoke a little bit more broadly about like the influences that other cultures had on Christianity. And it was very like mind opening. I was really intrigued by the Isis, Osiris, and Horus story of the Egyptians, and then I realized there was a lot more similar stories that were in the Bible, were in other history, cultures' history, Chinese, and everywhere. They all, a lot of them had different, things that they believed that, that were really similar to a lot of the things that were in Christianity. And just reading that, and then I read I just started reading other books that really I got into. And I have to before I get too far, I have to say that I also, like, when I went to prison after reading that book, and then reading, just talking to guys, a lot of guys, I'm sure just like Malcolm X, you get in there and you start reading, and you just feel like, oh, I'm gonna be, whatever you think you're gonna be. So I got with a bunch of guys that were, whether they were like 5%ers, Muslims, Hebrew Israelites, Nuapi. I mean, just a whole bunch of that type of stuff. And I became a Muslim, at least for a while. but I did a lot of just reading in general. And I really, I can definitely say that it was around that time that I I definitely just decided that I wasn't going to follow any sort of religion or really even believe too deeply in anything, just because I wasn't sure about a lot of things. And I did, the more that I read, I realized, or I really felt to myself that I was just kind of led down the path of Southern Baptist Christian, just because that's what both sides of my family were. That's all I knew. My family, they never ever talked about anything, any other religion, any other beliefs. I'm pretty sure most of them did not know much about anything else. So I kind of saw it, when I was in there and reading and all of that. I just saw it like as a really eye-opening experience, at least in that respect, especially when it came to the way I saw faith and belief and stuff like that. And it definitely left me, after a lot of just what I would call searching, left me with way more questions than answers. Just honestly about the validity of the whole thing, of all of it. I have to be honest. I questioned, like, if this was all just some thing to control people, or to, what, who knows? Just I didn't really see, I couldn't feel any, or, especially at that time, any real authenticity to anything religious. Just kind of, coming into that initial, especially I can say being young and being very, like having some zeal for it. Honestly, it's the only way I can think to describe it. Just never really, throughout my childhood, I don't remember studying or reading or searching for any sort of information as thorough or as deep as I did while I was incarcerated, looking into different, faiths and history of them. And now I can say pretty sure that had I, going back to that, had I not gone to prison from jail, had I been released by, some way, I can honestly say that I probably would have gone on to be a very strong believing Christian, just because of the situation that I found myself in. And I would have for certain believed that God had opened the courthouse doors, and let me free. But since that didn't happen, I really feel like I had to face the reality of, of course, what I had done, first of all, and that there wasn't gonna be anything or anyone coming to save me or rescue me from myself or what I had done. And honestly, I believe that when it comes to, since I've been home, I really honestly believe that being accountable for my actions has helped me to be a much better person than I believe faith would have ever made me. Just because I was not as religious as my family, at least they were outwardly. Not that they did bad things or anything. My mom still doesn't drink. I've never seen her drink at all. And my grandmother, my aunts, they're not into drugs or anything, or alcohol. So it's not like when I say outwardly, not like they were just wilding out throughout the week and then went to church on Sunday. But what I mean is, just from growing up in a religious family, I can't say that I ever really truly took full responsibility or accountability for my actions or things that were happening to me. I can be honest and say that the way that my mom especially, but even my aunts and my grandmother, the way that they because I was the only boy, and the way that they would talk to me and just love on me and stuff, it just honestly made me feel like nothing could happen to me. Almost like things would happen to other people, but I'm a chosen one and nothing's gonna happen to me. Nothing, I'm destined for something just because I'm me. And I also feel like my mom's and my family's faith, deep faith, just believing that things can happen out of nowhere and without any real cause or even real effort on your part. You can just God will just do stuff and just poof, make you whatever. I honestly feel like that's why I never really had any real accountability. And I think that, to be honest, deciding or realizing that there's not going to be any sort of savior for me. There's not going to be anything that protects me from myself or rescues me if I mess up. I have to be accountable for my own actions, for my own life, for what happens to me for the most part. I honestly believe that's been the best mindset for me. I don't believe that currently, or I don't believe I would benefit from having much faith in anything. I mean, pretty much everything that I can remember having faith in was in one way or another a letdown. Yeah, that's just I don't know. That's just been my experience leading up to this point. I mean, there's a lot that I could have, delved into, but I didn't want to sidetrack too much. Just kind of wanted to touch on it. It's already going on close to 20 minutes. But yeah, I feel like me deciding to just be accountable for myself now, I don't feel like I will benefit from any sort of faith or belief for the most part. I mean, maybe, in a broad, open-minded sense, but very, very, very narrow-minded, definitely not. So anyway, thank you all for taking the time to listen to me go on about my life. Thanks for checking out the channel again. As always, stay safe, stay free.